It is Saturday, August 30th, and it's getting pretty late with Jake Landau. Another Saturday episode for you folks, but it's a very good guest to justify it today. And I'm always happy to flip the schedule around to a Saturday or a Monday to get in a guest. And today we've got someone who's very relevant and very important right now, but always important in general. His name is Markus de Domenico, and he is the chair of the Toronto Catholic District School Board. He is the trustee for Ward 2, and it is my pleasure to have him on the program today to talk not just about his job in general in Catholic schools in the province, but also about the recent takeover of several school boards, including his own, by the provincial government. So, Markus, thank you for joining the show today.
Hey, Jake, it's great to be here, and thanks for asking me.
No, I'm happy to have you on the program. I mean, I've had several people from the Toronto District School Board, not current trustees, but I've had Norm, who you're familiar with. I had Jennifer Arp, who was formerly vice chair. But I was really excited to have someone from the Catholic school system, especially, obviously, the chair of one of the boards, just because it's underreported, I would say, in Canadian media. Like, we fund it, it exists to a large degree, but we kind of don't talk about it. So I do actually greatly appreciate the opportunity to have you on the show, especially with the current context of you guys no longer actually having autonomy over your own board as elected trustees.
Well, I guess if I follow the protocols, I should have asked the ministry or the Minister of Education if this was permissible, but that's really not my jam, so I'm
Yeah,
not going to do it
that's the
anyway.
first thing. Aren't they saying that it's technically illegal for any of you to speak to the public in your capacity as an elected official?
They have said that, and I've been, polite but very firm that I was not elected by the Minister of Education. I was elected by 40,000 constituents who can vote in my ward, and I intend to represent them to the next election if there is one.
Right, and I respect that deeply. I always respect civil disobedience. I've never been a guy that says the law is what's right. You're an elected official. You were elected by constituents to represent them, and until there's a new election in 2026, hopefully, you still represent them, no matter what the provincial government says.
Well, I love the quote. I just posted it the other day. In a democracy, dissent is an act of faith. And, it's very important that elected representatives do their job, have access to their constituents, that is sacrosanct, that should never, ever be taken away because it's the fundamental basis of our democracy.
Right, and I appreciate for people who are Catholic school board trustees how their faith does matter a great deal to their belief in democracy and dissent and discourse within democracy, and I feel that is like an under-discussed aspect of the Catholic school system.
It is actually, and to your other point also, the media does tend to focus on the large public boards like Toronto District. But the separate school system is really a great encapsulation of what it is to be Canadian. And here's why. It was based on minority rights. So at the time of Confederation, they went to several provinces and recognized that there were minority rights that needed to be protected. So rather than saying everybody has to be like us and forget that stuff, they said, yeah, we recognize that right. You're a minority. It needs to be protected and funded. And it was built right into Section 93. And I think that's a very proud Canadian thing to have happened.
Yeah, although at the time this was because there wasn't really like a secular school board. There was the Protestant and Catholic boards. And obviously at the dawn of Confederation, you had like it wasn't exactly along ethnic lines, obviously, but you had French people who were largely Catholic, you had Anglophones who were largely Protestant, and it was very much like a system to accommodate minority rights and to ensure that people were duly like that people got to be raised in their own culture, which was fair. But it is also fair to say that things have changed in recent years. I mean, the the main boards, or there's the secular board now. They're no longer a Protestant board. And I also know I'm a Jew, so I didn't go to the Catholic schools, obviously, but
Sure.
yeah,
And there's a great system of schools,
there
Jewish
is.
schools. Now
I
they're
did.
not publicly funded.
Right.
That's true. As a singer, and that's actually my background
Ooh.
way back, singing and family music. I started on the Mr. Dress Up show. Actually,
Ooh.
I did tons of concerts in Toronto schools, including the Jewish network of schools, and it was really a lot of fun. Got to know lots of people in all of those communities. And, I don't mean to stereotype, but I would say the Jewish community is very, very values art and music to a great degree.
Well, I appreciate
And
the
I found it
compliment.
very welcoming. Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
I mean, I know it's not a stereotype really. It's sort of a massive generalization. But I would say, I sang in a lot of the Jewish schools in North York, especially. And yeah, it's, different public systems have different slants to them. Now, the Catholic system, as you rightly pointed out, I mean, it's not so black and white as it is now. And there are a lot of people that don't really want a Catholic system. They feel it's outdated. But I would counter that by saying it's a very successful system. We produce a high quality of education, and we're also quite strong on protecting our constitutional rights.
Right. And I know, like, in the Toronto Catholic District School Board, things like LGBTQ rights and, like, sexual education are in a better state than they might be in other Catholic school boards across the province. I know you yourself have voted in favor of things like Pride Month and flying the Pride flag in June. So like that part doesn't make me uncomfortable in Toronto, but I know there are other Catholic boards around the province that maybe don't take that responsibility as seriously. And I do maybe consider, like, is there a problem in intermingling a Catholic board with the government, and that it forces the Catholic nature of the board to be compromised in an essence?
Wow, that is a very, very good question. There's a lot of layers to that, Jake. First of all, I would say I want to give a shout out to my friend Norm DePasquale, who was trustee with me in those days, and he was a absolute strong supporter of the movement to recognize Pride, and we work closely together on it. And I'm very proud of that. Toronto Catholic has led the way, incorporating the Ontario Human Rights Code, for example, into our code of conduct. Yes, there was conflict about that. There are very, very conservative Catholics that feel that we must follow the church, and we are bound to be Catholic. Of course, that's the essence and uniqueness of our system. However, there is another side to it. The other side is that we're publicly funded. We must respect and we should embrace and respect, I would say, maybe more clearly, the fact that there is a large system of people in the government that want us to be progressive, and I agree with them. I want the system to be open and open-minded, I should say, and welcoming. That's really why we did the Pride issue and the code of conduct, is we want our schools to be open to everyone, students and staff. And the curriculum, Jake, it actually comes from the ministry anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So, we put a Catholic lens on it, as we are allowed to do. But I mean, what's more Catholic than being open and loving? That's my interpretation.
Right. It's like actually embracing the spirit of Jesus and the way that he
Yes.
treated. Yeah. Like, I may not believe in him as a divine figure, but I think he was a pretty cool dude and definitely, like, should be a role model for people and how to, like, treat others. Like,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, Jesus was a revolutionary.
Yeah.
He embraced all of the parts of the community that were discarded by the majority. So he embraced those, like, from lepers to prostitutes to
Right.
whatever. he made a point of
I
saying, look, you don't have the right to judge these people. They are God's children, like everyone else is. And, one might think that's why he ended, the way he did, because he really upset the system.
he spoke to
And
power
he,
too
but,
much for his own good.
well, yes. Now, if we're going to get into the Bible,
Yeah,
it was
for everyone's
preordained that
good.
this was
Yeah,
going to happen.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's a figure of love, and that's why
And I mean, to be
I
fair,
believe.
if he knows it's going to happen and does it anyways, then that just adds to the heroism. Like,
Yeah, I would agree with that.
yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Um, mhm.
I do appreciate like Christian theology, both Catholic and Protestant. I may not be Christian myself, but I do appreciate like all the other religions of the world. I think it's important to learn about all these things, and like we all live together, especially in Canada where we have such a widely diverse population, and like especially in Toronto, I think you can find literally every religion under the sun in this city. But you get the idea. It's like I like to be in tune with what other people believe, even if it isn't my own belief, because we're all living together.
Yeah, Toronto is really quite incredible. I don't know how you've done things in your own life, Jake, in terms of travel, but I've traveled quite a lot, and Toronto is certainly unique in its multicultural aspect. It is a city of amazing culture and food and language and music and dance and literature, and I'm really amazed how we get along so well with this diversity, because some cultures don't, they don't embrace the diversity like we do.
I've been to some places down south in America where it's so white, like so like only white that like Jews and Italians and Irish people aren't considered white there. And that's scary to me. I mean, for one, racism is always bad in any context, obviously. But it's really scary when like they're so white only that they start deciding who's not white enough.
So I'll tell you a quick little story, if I might.
Please do.
My mom and dad came here in 1947 from England. My father was Maltese. My mother was British. They married at the end of the war, and they came to Canada. They'd never been here. They'd never seen snow. The whole typical kind of story. Arrived with $50 and a cup of coffee from the Red Cross at the airport, and they went to London, Ontario, which was a much smaller place at the time. And my father went out, got a job day one, went out to rent a flat. And the lady told him to his face, they didn't rent to Catholics or dark people. And he'd never experienced that. So he goes home and tells my mom, who was blonde, blue-eyed, and as British as you could get, still said tomato all her life, and she was, very British. And she went to the same lady and rented the same apartment because she was what this lady thought you should be. Now, this is just one small experience, but it shows you how things are not, it's not that long ago.
Right.
It's only one generation.
And it explains,
And
like, I appreciate why there was a separate Catholic system, like, in the age of, like, the Orange Order mayors of Toronto who would call Catholics papists, which
yep.
is
Mm-hmm.
an absurd slur that, like, you only hear it in, like, Murdoch mysteries nowadays.
Well, even John Kennedy, there was a lot of controversy about the first Catholic U.S. president, whether and he was asked, I remember the press conference, I've seen it online since, are you going to answer to the Pope or are you going to answer to Congress? And of course, his answer is, I'm going to answer to Congress. Um, so, that's not even that long ago. That's the 1960.
Right, and thankfully things have changed for the better in terms of Catholics being in positions of authority in North America. I mean, for
Mm-hmm.
one, we had Justin Trudeau recently as prime minister, and I can't say that his Catholicism was a very big deal. I mean, it mattered mainly when he asked Pope Francis to please apologize for the residential schools,
Right.
and also like it came up a bit like when he said there was the mandate in the Liberal Party that candidates had to support abortion rights. But
Hmm.
I also think he did a good service in just showing that it doesn't really like matter to your electoral prospects either way anymore. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
like being a specific religion should help you, like, but it should just be neutral. Yeah.
Yes, I would hope it wouldn't, but I think there's sort of a tribal aspect to human nature where we are naturally drawn to our roots to some extent. Doesn't mean that all Catholics or all Jews or all whatever are going to vote one way, but you know, people are people, and they have been this way for a long, since the beginning, and they have affiliations that came, a lot from their parents and their grandparents and their perspectives. But of course, then again, children are not carbon copies of their parents. So these things get changed, but there's a tribal aspect to humanity.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, I'm Jewish and I obviously have like a lot of traditions that carry on from my family, but of course there are also differences of opinion. I mean, for like my writing on the conflict and what Israel has done in Palestine is quite public, and obviously there are family members of mine who disagree heavily. But
Okay,
like
yeah,
we,
I'm
we
sure. Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
we get along. We
Well,
we have spirited debates, but we still get along.
families by nature
Yeah.
have a lot of internal conflicts, and that's just because we're so close and we do love each other, and that brings a spirited debate usually.
But it also happens like in the wider community as well too. It's like you have like your tribe of people that you're in group, if you will, but there's still conflict within that in group as well.
Yes, absolutely true. I mean, the word Catholic means universal. Within the Catholic community, there's a wide divergence of opinion on a lot of things. Okay. And this has been since the very beginning of Catholicism. So I think it's not something that we should shy away from. It's spirited debate. I believe as long as it's respectful and allows for the other side to be heard and to actually listen to, not just heard, it is perfectly okay. In fact, encouraged.
Right, especially because you're right. Not all Catholics are the same. Like
Not at all.
I'm not even Catholic or Christian, but I know it's like not everyone under the Roman Catholic Church, or I mean, the Catholic Church more broadly, does Latin rites, but they're still considered Catholic. By you get what I mean? It's like
I
I
do.
know there's
Yeah.
the Eastern rites. I'm probably bungling
Yes.
a little bit of
Hmm.
it, but like there are different ways to be Catholic, but you're all still Catholic. And I know
Hmm.
Vatican II like broadened things further by letting you do services in the local language instead of in Latin. So when you talk about like making an open and welcoming Catholic school board, like even though it may not be the school board for me, like you do want to make sure it's welcoming. I mean, one, because you have different kinds of Catholics who will be there, but also because there is like a large proportion of students in the Catholic system who are not Catholic or Christian, are they?
So, in the secondary part of the Catholic system, that is true. We are open to everyone in the secondary schools. We do have the right in the elementary schools to, and you'll see a bit of divergence, by the way, Jake, across the province. But at Toronto Catholic, we ask for a baptismal certificate of a child going to our elementary school or of a parent. We want our Catholic schools to be Catholic because there are Catholic rites within the school. But we have also various categories, for example, like the Eastern Rites. And in Ward 2, Tobago Center, that I represent, there's a very large Ukrainian population.
Right.
We have two of the three schools here. And, they do recognize the Pope, of course. That's one of the fundamental things. But they have their own nature of their own religion. And it's a beautiful religion. But if you go to a Catholic Mass and you go to the Ukrainian Eastern Rite, you're going to see differences.
Yeah. And I mean, Judaism doesn't have quite as many different variations as Christianity does, just probably because we don't have as many people. But like it's like, for example, between like an Ashkenazi, like an Eastern European Jewish synagogue, you'll have like the bima at the front where the rabbi
Hmm.
speaks.
Hmm.
But in a Sephardic one, so like North Africa and like Iberia, Spain, and Portugal, Like you'll have it instead in the center and you'll have seating on all four sides around it. And I'm Ashkenazi, but I actually kind of like the Sephardic version a bit better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, in the Catholic religion, I mean, it's very important that we always remember Jesus was a Jew. This is where the religion came from. Our Catholic religion is based on the life of Jesus in the New Testament.
Right.
And it's fascinating how humans by nature, once again, find divisions rather than unity. I'd like to think that there's so much more in common than not with people.
Right.
But you know, we tend to look where are those points of contact that are conflict. Okay, you can always find that, and even in your reference to family disagreements. Okay, but I would hope in your case, and I know in my case for sure, there's much more commonality than there is division.
So, do you describe yourself as an ecumenialist within the Catholic Church?
Well, I think for me and for your audience, you're going to have to define that a wee bit
Oh,
so I can.
oh yeah, my apologies for everyone at home who isn't as into it as I am. It's a broader position of like you may not agree on all the details of Christianity with other Christians, but generally agreeing that you're under the umbrella of Christianity and you're on the path, if I'm correct.
Yes, I mean, thank you for that explanation. Yeah, I would say that that captures me. Now, I was raised in a family, Jake, where my mom was Church of England and my father was Roman Catholic from Malta. And I got to tell you, the Roman Catholics in my father's day in Malta were 99.99999% Roman Catholic. That's changed, of course, a bit, but since then. But so I grew up in that kind of split religion. Um, I was an altar boy. I went to Catholic school. But once again, here we go back to Justin Trudeau and others. We have to remember that once we're elected, we need to be doing what's student achievement focus. Okay, that's what everything is about.
Right.
And yes, in the Catholic system, the faith is absolutely integral to what we're doing. But I like to look through the lens of what, and I've asked myself this a thousand times, Jake, since I've been elected and since I've been working as a trustee and now as chair, is what benefits my students? How do I help them? How do I bring them into this environment of the school, feeling welcome, ready to learn, safe, and well informed and prepared for the next step, the next grade, the next level, the next adventure. That's my key focus.
Right. It is about like the school and the education.
Yes, one 1000%. And once again, we have so much more in common than we do diversions,
Right.
divisions. I said, pardon me.
Uh, Now, I know from the Jewish perspective, like we do appreciate like the talk about unity, and the Jewish opinion on Christianity really does depend on the Christian, because I mean, of course, as you're right, there's so many different ways to be Christian. I think you get into the trouble. You're right, and talking about Jesus was a Jew. The Old Testament is the Jewish Bible with some tweaks and translation edits, and it's good when Christians like acknowledge that heritage and where things come from. Like I think the problem is like you have on the one hand you have dual covenant theology, which says that the Jewish path is still a legitimate path, and that Jesus didn't come to replace Jews. Christians are doing their own thing. But then you also have supersessionist theology, which says that Christianity supersedes Judaism, it replaces it. And obviously, like, one of those is more amenable to us than the other.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe it's because I'm a very kind of simpler person. I look at Catholicism as the life of Christ and the model that he gave us, um, that he died for our sins, that his way, the light that he showed us, is the key to everything. And how the church has evolved since that time, and you know the rules, the dogma. Okay, it's all important. I don't dismiss it in any fashion, but I really do like to look at the really just the core of what we're talking about, and that's the love of the fellow person, and the acceptance of others, and the power of love. That's really what comes through with Jesus is the power of love despite everything.
The
Okay.
message is more important than the institution.
In my personal case, by a long shot.
I mean, I agree. It's like my opinion on religion is like I may not believe in God, but I hope God still believes in me. I'll try to do the best I can for him, like if he's
This
there
sounds
or
it
if
sounds
she's
like an
there.
excellent title for a book.
Yeah,
I like it very much,
I
and
know,
I would concur with. I believe in God, and I believe in the message, and I know that He does believe in me, despite my faults that we all have. And I just always like to recenter myself on that message. And I've got to tell you, and I don't know if Norm Pasquale got into this with you, but being a Catholic trustee was, is pretty challenging because of the breadth and width of the viewpoints. But once again, we always boiled it down to what's best for our students, and we did our best in that respect.
well, that's a good note to end our first half on. But don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be back with Markus de Domenico, the chair of the Toronto Catholic District School Board and the trustee for Ward 2, in our second half with our 3 headline topics of the week. See you in a sec. Today's episode of It's Getting Pretty Late with Jake Landau is brought to you by me. Folks, all of my work is available for free with no paywall at jakelandau.ca. But in order to keep writing and recording, I need money, because money is what makes this show go round. So, if you enjoy my content or find it informative, please consider a paid subscription at jakelandau.ca/subscribe. And please leave a 5-star rating on the show in your favorite podcast app, be it Apple, Spotify, or a secret third thing. Thank you, and enjoy the show. And we are back from the break with our guest Markus de Domenico and our 3 headline topics of the week. And for our first headline topic, on the topic of international trade between the United States and Canada, Mark Carney's top trade negotiator says talks with Donald Trump face challenges, but I don't see a dead end yet. In an interview with the Toronto Star Friday, Dominic LeBlanc, who met with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in Washington this week, said officials on both sides were making progress. This was written by Riza Patel from the Toronto Star at the Ottawa Bureau. And I don't know that there's been much progress, Markus, but they're claiming progress.
Well, I mean, I had to chuckle when I read that line. We're not at a dead end yet. Oh dear,
Yeah,
that's not
the yet.
exactly inspiring. It's clearly he's considering that we're rapidly heading to the dead end, but we're not quite there yet. So
Imagine like the
okay.
Roadrunner is like, I know that. I mean, Wile E.
There's a rock
Coyote is
above
like,
me.
I know that the Roadrunner painted a fake road on this wall, but I'm going to keep running at it anyway.
There are a lot of life lessons in the Roadrunner, I would say.
Yeah.
The Roadrunner and the Godfather 1 and 2 have a
Yeah.
lot of life lessons in them. So back
Two
to
seminal Catholic texts.
so that's right. May your first child be a masculine child, said Luca Brasi. Okay, so we're not at a dead end yet. Unfortunately, I think we are rapidly heading that way. The United States holds not all the cards, but most of the cards. I'm going to tell you, I had an interesting conversation where I was invited to a little luncheon. It was quite small, maybe 50 people, by the C.D. Howe Institute a couple of years ago. And the speaker was Wilbur Ross. And Wilbur Ross, I'm not sure if you're aware, he was the former U.S. Secretary of Commerce under Donald Trump in the first term. Elderly gentleman, had done a tremendous amount of bankruptcy law, which is how he met Donald Trump. He was suing him for his casinos in New Jersey. That's a whole other scandal. But anyway, he was a very interesting person, and he talked about how it was to deal with Donald Trump and sort of the manic, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but the things change very, very quickly with this particular individual. And he does like to wield his authority and his power as a blunt instrument. And it's not this. My guess is, this is not going to be a trade negotiation of finesse. It's going to be a very, very tough position for Canada to overcome
It's a power
versus
struggle,
power.
essentially.
Oh,
Yeah.
and this is in Donald Trump's wheelhouse.
Right.
So we better have something we can use, because we're not in a dead end yet is not inspiring.
Yeah, and when we talk about the power struggle, like part of it is like the public narrative, and the battle of narratives is Donald Trump saying we're doing the tariffs, like they're great, they're amazing, like we're gonna have great tariffs and they're gonna make everybody great again and everything's gonna be wonderful. While meanwhile in the background, people are being dragged off to concentration camps and like called Alligator Alcatraz. But on the Canadian side, you've got us saying, "Oh no, if don't do this, Donald Trump, or it'll really hurt us." Like that's the worst thing you can tell him. He's a bully. Like
Yeah, you don't give up power to the enemy. It's also quite interesting, Jake, that Donald Trump, who he admires, I always find that, like, in terms of presidents. And I read a great book several years ago about Grover Cleveland. It was a story of, like, now who would think to read about Grover Cleveland? I don't know why, but I got this book, and he was the only president like Trump who was president, then wasn't president, and then became president again. And the thing about Grover Cleveland, too, he was big on tariffs. He was, I think, the inspiration in some sense, somewhere deep in that dark mind, to say, hang on, Grover Cleveland did it, and the United States made a ton of money. Now, of course, the world has completely changed since 1900, for goodness sake. But I think there's something in there with Donald Trump, Grover Cleveland, and his other big president that he liked, Andrew
you've got
Jackson.
a point there, and like I do laugh because in Ferris Bueller, the lecture, the supposedly boring lecture by the teacher that all the students are tuning out of, and I guess the audience is tuning out of too. This is what the lecture is about: how tariffs like screwed up the the American economy, like in the early 1900s, because they're like, oh, we're going to use tariffs to pay for everything, and it's screwed up trade, and they've learned this lesson before, and I guess they're gonna it's like one of my favorite stories from Jewish and also Christian theology by extent is Moses as a kid, like touching the coals and then burning his throat. And I just love I love the whole parable of a child having to touch the stove to know it's hot.
Right. Right.
I mean, I don't.
Well,
For folks at home, do not let your child touch a stove to know it's hot.
Yeah, this
please.
is not a good learning lesson. It's an accident waiting to happen sometimes, but it's not. I mean,
it's funny when you're just talking about it, not when it actually happens.
But it's not your finger.
Yeah.
Or your child, hopefully. So if you ever get a chance, read this book, A Man of Iron, I think it's called. And it is quite fascinating. I mean, I tend to read this kind of stuff, or now I tend to listen to audiobooks because I find them a bit more accessible and fun to listen to the voice. But yeah, Donald Trump is not going to be, Barack Obama or even George W. or anyone. Like Donald Trump is a whole different category. I think when you have a bully, the worst thing you can do is bow down. And I'm going to make a segue here, if I might, Jake,
please do,
to how we are dealing with education in Ontario right now and how trustees are being bullied.
No, yeah, it's pretty fair. It's like the government is telling you you no longer have a role you were elected to, and that if you try to keep doing the role, that they will punish you through their legal mechanism. And it's not the only bullying tactic that's been used by Doug Ford that's similar to Donald Trump's bullying tactics. There was the back to work legislation using the notwithstanding clause for school workers, and that thankfully they resisted it by just keeping going on strike anyway. and I think that
Right,
was a bit of a model for the Air Canada flight attendants as well.
right.
My grandmother was a teacher, and two of my aunts were both teachers, so I'm pretty big on this on the unions for not just teachers unions, but unions in general. We're a union family. I like workers' rights in general. And they're a pretty good barometer for like how much the government can step on people, because that's people's livelihoods. It's how they pay for like their rent, their food, their kids. Like, it's important.
Yeah, and as a trustee, we don't have that privilege, unfortunately. We're 12 individuals at Toronto Catholic. So as chair, I'm keeping it together as best I can to make sure the trustees are as informed as we can be. But there is definitely this code of silence. I've never seen this before, where you can't speak, you can't even go on property. This is way, way over the top, and
Like,
controlling the
blatantly
narrative
in
is,
violation of the charter.
yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine if things really continue to go south, there'll be a legal challenge, and we have certain rights, and but let's boil it down really. What's the right of the parent? This is what really grinds my gears. Is the moms and dads that I represent out there, the students, they don't have a voice. Like 500,000 students on in one day, June 27th, when they put former boards under supervision. 500,000 students didn't have a trustee.
Right. Like,
Like, what are they thinking of?
oh yeah, it's
I've
like
had,
you don't need to
yeah,
justify the existence of trustees to me. It's like school board trustees just make sense. It's important that there's like I consider your role primarily as that of like an ombudsperson. Like, you
yeah,
are the
yeah,
primary like recourse for parents and children in the system who are
hmm,
treated unfairly. And like
yeah.
I had an IEP as a kid, like, so, and I am familiar with teachers who thought an IEP was a suggestion and not a requirement. And like that's one of the things trustees are there for, to make sure that like you get what you're supposed to get as people in the system.
Well, and that's very true. And that's an excellent example, actually. An incredibly important part of students' achievement is the recognition and holding to the work of the IEP, what's in there for that individual, and it is individual. Yeah, so I find it very odd what is happening in Ontario. Um, I I started by trying just to keep things together at the board. We cooperated fully. We knew there was nothing. There was no smoking gun
Right, you
that would put
operated in
us
good
under supervision.
faith.
In good faith,
Yeah.
yep. And I kept lines of communication wide open to all of the political people that I know, and I do know a fair amount of them, certainly in this area. And it was all for naught. It was all because this has been preordained. There is a right wing agenda by certain people in the Ford government to make us, have the government control what boards are doing all the time, not recognizing that there's a very unique. This is a unique problem. There's lots of different types of boards and different communities across Ontario, and this one size fits all is a lot of bureaucratic nonsense. It's just the easiest way to do things, but it is not the proper way to do things. We need to remember that students in Rainy River and students in North Bay and students in Ottawa and students in downtown Toronto all have different challenges. And the one size model, like the one size model for funding, which is another ridiculous idea, does not serve families. It
Right.
just doesn't.
You're not allowed to run a deficit, but you're also not given tools to generate revenue. You just kind of get the money that the province gives you, but the province essentially use you as like a buffet or like a barrier against public opinion blowback, because they can say, "Oh, it's the trustees' fault. It's not our fault," even though you only get to slice up the pie that you are baked. You don't bake the pie.
We do not. We can only work with the money that we're given. It's quite frustrating when you deal with topics like special education, where at Toronto Catholic it's 25 million short of what's required. And I said this the other day on the show. You're judged by how you treat the most vulnerable in the system. And for God's sake, You have a child with special needs coming to the school, and we are scrambling day after day after day to find supports for that child. And yet the minister's standing around and saying, "Oh, we give 30 billion to the system." Yet that's got nothing to do with how that particular child is being serviced. Because I can tell the minister, as I did, by the way, that you're not supporting special needs
Right.
children properly.
And
Not at
you're
all.
preaching to the choir here. I'm
Yeah.
autistic, so I'm delighted to say that I have a very fulfilling life with a career and I'm a normal person, but like you get what I mean. It's like these supports are important because they're what help people like me just become normal functioning adults in society. We're still autistic, obviously, but like we have jobs, we have friends, like we go out and we drink and we smoke and we do drugs and all the other adults. You get the idea. Like we're people.
Well,
Like
okay,
perhaps
so
you're not encouraging people to do those things
I'm
necessarily,
not, but
but you get what I mean.
yeah,
It's like we're going to grow
I
up. We're going to be
yes, I
actual
do.
human beings. Like
Yes, I'd encourage you to
we
skip the drugs part. But
yeah.
other than that, you do what you do.
Yeah.
But I'm
Just a
just being a
teeny
little
bit of
facetious here.
marijuana. God has never
Yeah,
had a
okay.
problem with a burning bush.
Okay. This is more interesting than I even imagined. Okay, so look,
Yeah.
I'm just going to say this, that we deal, as you rightly said, we deal and carve up those dollars. But there's one other part to it, Jake, that is not spoken of, is that we get certain uh, funding that is absolutely strictly for one purpose. In order to keep our spec ed system going properly and as best as it does with the great staff we have, we actually have to borrow from other areas and bring them over to that, where areas that aren't absolutely specifically designated for something.
Right.
So that just shows you how difficult the system is when you have to run around and the old stealing from Peter to pay Paul, or et cetera, kind of philosophy. So I'm going to say that the trustees do their best. The government has known since COVID, Jake, since COVID, that everything was going south in the finances of every board across this province. At Toronto Catholic, and Norm DePasquale, once again, our friend Norm, was big on this with me, which is we spend what we need to support students during and after COVID. And here's the thing, it's after COVID that has really caused the deficit, because we had so many learning deficits that we wanted to continue to support, and health issues we wanted to continue to monitor and support.
Right.
That drove us into deficit. The ministry approved it, and then suddenly, we don't approve it anymore. I wonder why that is.
Yeah.
And I'm being, once again, slightly facetious here, but they know, they signed off on it, they agreed to it, because they know at the ministry they are the cause for the funding deficits.
Right.
And yet they blame us.
It's an intentional decision to just not pay enough money for something that is not optional. Like
Yes, and how could education, and I bring this over to the health portfolio also, how can that not be worth what people need?
right.
I mean, these are our children, and in the health care sector, it's the whole population. These should be the primary focus, not the nickels and dimes coming out of the accountants at the ministry, excuse me, with all their million rules about how every nickel's got to be spent. The bottom line is we don't need nickels, we need dollars. We need funding for students, and it's got to be appropriate.
On one final bit on this topic before we move on to our next headline topic, I know they're floating trial balloons now about just getting rid of elected trustees altogether and having it be directly administered by the provincial government or by something. But and this is bad enough for the secular boards. But I know I talked in our first half about the concerns about intermingling the government and the Catholic system. But doesn't that get a lot more concerning when you have just a normal elected government running a Catholic school board? Like without any trustees, just
It's
a random
violate.
bureaucrat running a religious institution?
Well, there's a couple things here. Just imagine, a parent has a problem. Used to call the trustee about a busing. The bus wasn't there. Is the bus going to be there tomorrow? Okay, so here's their solution now. Apparently, You call Queen's Park and speak to somebody who's also dealing with thousands of other complaints, and they're going to solve that in an hour or two, which is what a lot of trustees do to help. So, but to your question directly, yes, the Catholic system will have a lot of problem with a secular government, which is fine. That's the way it is, and that's the way it should be, actually, running a faith-based system.
Right.
So
Like the
one
trustees
would
are an
wonder.
important like intermediary there that are elected but Catholic.
Well, one of our main functions is to promote the Catholic system and the uniqueness and the importance of it. And it's based on the legal rights that we have. And we're not going to give those legal rights up, Jake, without a heck of a fight. Like, this is not just going to be someone at a stroke of a pen with the minister that we're dealing with now saying, oh, you know what? You have deficits, you're gone, you're gone, you're gone, you're gone. And here comes the $360,000 a year supervisor who has no knowledge of education is going to run it.
Right.
That's not going to happen if it comes down to, okay, you know what? Catholics, you don't get the system anymore.
And that's a higher salary than like members of parliament, let alone members of provincial parliament. Like
Yeah,
for
it's
someone
massive.
completely unaccountable to the public. And what
Yes, the supervisor,
and
does what.
and a final bit before we go on to our next
Yeah,
topic. For
sure.
comparison, how much are trustees paid?
The Toronto board, $18,000 a year.
Yeah, that's not good.
Well, it's not. Originally, I mean, it was higher years and years ago. But that's what I signed up for. I did not sign up for this. Frankly, I think I've lost money being a trustee, but I've done it joyfully.
Hmm.
I'm a dad and a stepfather of 7 children, Jake.
Hmm.
They all went through the system. I was a parent rep. I did the hamburger flipping. I did the, cookie sales or whatever to raise money for my school. I helped build a park. That's why I got involved in it, because I think it's so important. And I ran for trustee to try and help.
You
And
care a
that's
lot.
what I've experienced. Well, I care. And you know what? My other trustees care a lot. I admire them. I don't agree with every single one of them, but I think our board is quite united, maybe more than ever. But I admire the fact that they go to like meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting that goes on for hours and hours and hours. And then we meet with parents on top of that, of course, many, many times. So it's almost a vocation to be a trustee. And at the Toronto District Board, I think the salaries maybe $25,000 because they have, more students. It's based on per student. But, it's, you don't do it for the money, you do it to help kids.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is doing it for the money at that rate. But
the supervisors do it okay.
No, and I'm glad you're all clearly doing it out of public service, but it also does frustrate me before we move on, just that, people who are doing a very important elected job are not compensated appropriately and need to work second jobs, because you should be able to focus primarily on the kids.
Yes, in the perfect world. But once again, I signed up for that. I am not asking for anything different than that. What I'm asking for is, and I say this directly to the Premier, I know you have empathy for students and children. This plan by this minister, my 5th minister, by the way, in 7 years, is a disaster for parents. It is, yes, you're talking about reforms and we're going to, the old system. Well, the old system is based on democracy. Sorry, democracy itself is very, very old, but it is the key to the success of countries like Canada, that we have democracy, and we need to respect it an awful lot more than what's happening right now at the Ministry of Education.
Good point. All right. Moving on to our next headline topic, from The Guardian, from journalist Leyland Checo in Toronto. And I'm sure you'll have opinions about this one, Marcus. Civil rights groups are alarmed over Quebec's move to ban prayer in public. Announcement follows statements from Quebec Premier, who expressed frustration over public prayers in Montreal. Marcus, for our no prize question of the week for pointing out the obvious, do you think it should be illegal to pray in public?
No.
No is the correct answer. Congratulations on your no prize.
I had a 50-50 chance on the prize.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Quebec is a very interesting situation. When it started in Bill 21, what was that, 6 years ago or something like that, about secularism. And this came from a from a province that was really, I mean, you talk about the super religious. Quebec, and I might even venture to say Newfoundland at one time, talk about super religious, and now they've gone to a whole different, like the pendulum has
Right.
swung
They
as
went
far as it can
from
go.
Catholicism, like very ingrained, and then there was the Quiet Revolution, and now it's swung all the way to laicite.
Right,
Right.
right. So people have a right and have a constitutional right and a charter right to their religious beliefs. That should never be taken away. I don't understand the idea of, you can't wear a headscarf or you name it. If you're working in the public service, that's complete nonsense to me. It comes down to whether you're going to proselytize and evangelize to people coming in to get their driver's license. Of course, you're not going to do that. But they seem to think that by doing that, they can stop the other. So it's very frightening to me to say, have a government saying, well, you can't pray in public. Well, what's next? You can't pray at all.
Right.
So people should have that right.
And this is what like scares me about things like the notwithstanding clause, especially as a Jew, because we'll always be a minority. Like we're not going to suddenly become like 40% of the Canadian population overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Not unless a lot of us get very busy in the next year or so. But like
Okay.
but like you get what it's like. We do not want to live at the mercy of a tyrannical majority who just decide that we do not have right. And it's very transparent to me, Marcus, that in Quebec, this is coming into place mainly because Muslims were praying in public. Like, they've never had a
Right.
problem with Christianity in public. I mean, to their credit, recently, a couple years back, they took down the giant cross in the National Assembly. But like, they still have like the giant glowing cross on the top of Mount Royal in the middle of Montreal. And I'm like, well, if you're talking about getting rid of public displays of religion, I don't know how you can go after like a random Muslim just praying one of their 5 times a day, but be totally fine with this giant thing. Like,
Well, I think it might be driven, though, Jake. I think it might be driven by praying that disrupts the order of daily, like, say, traffic or walking, or I don't know, whatever it is. But I think that's what's driving it. And that's where they may get some support from some people saying, look, if you stand in the street and you shut down the street.
true,
But
but
the
yeah,
idea that you would just blanketly say, oh, well, you can't pray in public. Well, Catholics pray. I mean, you get Catholics standing in front of abortion centers praying, right? You get Catholics, praying as we do our procession on Good Friday. I've walked in them.
I've
We
seen
walked
women in
downtown Toronto.
airports with rosary beads. Like,
Okay, yeah.
it,
I mean, why is this such a problem? Why are people, so concerned of all the issues? You know, uh, you know, I just don't get it. Let people be people. If you are that, a person of faith that much, go for it.
I
It should be
like
okay.
I'm an atheist, but I'm not like an anti-theist. Like I don't believe in this kind of like Quebec or French like laicite where you like eradicate religion from public life entirely. Like it's a very like personal and deeply held thing for people. I wouldn't like anyone forcing a religious identity on me. I'm not going to force a religious identity on anyone else, and lack of religious identity is an identity in and of itself.
Well, faith plays an important role in a lot of people's lives, and let's go way, way back to the French Revolution. One of the first things they did when the revolution took place is they got rid of any signs of Catholicism or faith. They were completely banned. You see the same thing in communist countries. What's the first thing they go after? They go after religion because religion is a whole code of ethics that is based on this concept of love and acceptance. They don't want that. People like that, those authoritarian figures, want the affection and the love and the focus to go to the state. the state must control everything. You see this, we saw this in the Eastern Bloc countries in the former Soviet Union. We saw it in Cambodia under Pol Pot. Those kinds of things are quite frightening. Now, I'm not, alluding that Quebec is anywhere near that kind of level, but it is odd that they seem to be, very concerned about some people praying.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I have two things. Like, one on the communist and Eastern Bloc country point. Like, my family has a unique experience with it because we were Jews in the Soviet Union. My great grandfather Abraham, who I get my middle name from, he was born in Poland. He and his wife evacuated Poland to the Soviet Union controlled part after the Molotov-Ribbentrop. And this is the thing. It's like, as much as Poland hates that deal did kind of save my family's life because we got put into the Soviet part. And like,
Right.
it was a weird status for Jews in like the 20s and 30s in the Soviet Union, because before
Mm-hmm.
like Stalin's anti-Semitism was prevalent, like more under the
Right.
Lenin and the early Stalin years, like Jews were in a pretty good place. Like obviously religion was targeted, as you said, but Jews had formed like an interesting like secular culture, like when you went to Belarus, like the signs were in like four languages, like all in equal print, and one of them was Yiddish. There were Yiddish newspapers, there were Soviet funded Yiddish language schools for Jewish children. So like it was a trade we were kind of willing to make because it was the best deal that Jews were getting anywhere in Europe. But
Right.
like
Right. Right.
but then things changed. And
Yeah, that
also, I
didn't
don't
last.
think Jews should have to make that trade-off to be accepted by
Yeah.
society at large. I was happy
Hmm.
to have a secular version of Jewish culture. I do have an affinity to that, but it shouldn't be forced on people. Eh, like,
Well, and it was a choice that people had to make, sort of the best of a bad
right.
situation, when you think.
Yeah. It's like between the Soviets and the Nazis for Jews, it was no contest. But like it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that like
Okay.
everything the Soviets did is like excusable or okay. And I say this as a socialist who thinks that there are important commitments that need to be made to democracy and human rights and freedom of expression and association and belief. But like
Hmm.
my second thing that I would say is when we talked about the people who are say praying in the street, Muslims, like I think an important part of that though is part of that is as public protest against previous Islamophobic laws and anti-religious laws like the headscarf ban. And that's the thing where religion can as well be expressed by sincere adherents as a form of protest. Like it's to say, we are Muslim. There is nothing wrong with being Muslim. We are going to exist in public, whether you like it or not. And I have full affinity for that.
Yeah, I mean, people should be able to express themselves. They're not a danger to society by expressing their religious beliefs and by, whatever they have, wear something or whatever that is. That it's so, I don't know. I just don't understand, Jake, and maybe you can help me with this. I don't understand why this would be the focus of policy.
I
Like,
think
what is driving it?
people like scapegoats. People like when they can blame somebody or say that someone is degenerating or ruining society. And as a Jew, as a queer person, as an autistic person, I know where that leads. Like I know what that means for
Right.
people like me, and I much like living.
Yes. So, yeah, of course. I mean, Nazi Germany was about the demonizing of people, like, and of course, the Jews were the main group that took a huge, massive attack on their just the right to
I think
live.
one of the worst stories I've heard from Nazi Germany is before they started putting the Jews in the camps, when the first people they targeted were communists and socialists and the German parties, they would both go to the same camp. and they would announce over the guards would announce when someone from the Communist Party or the Social Democrat Party was being added to the camp as a prisoner, and the people from the other party would cheer when someone from the opposite party came in. And I mean, it's horrible for several reasons. For one, it's an example of how leftist infighting is stupid. But two, like it's just an example of how like dehumanizing each other, like communists and socialists dehumanizing each other, it just made it easier to kill both of them for the Nazis.
Well, what is that expression? I don't have it in front
First
of
they
me.
came
First
for the
they came.
communists, and no one cared because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the
Right.
trade unionists, and then they came for and like the whole idea is that progression. And I think what the funniest part is that a lot of the versions of it censor the part where it says first they came for the communists, and they replace it with like socialists or something tamer. Because like, and I think and I don't like when they do that, because the whole idea is like they targeted communism and socialism in Nazi Germany, but then what they did was they described Jews as cultural Bolsheviks. They're like, even if they're not socialists, just their entire culture is promoting a socialist ideology, and essentially they just use the word as being able to yell at anyone they don't like, to demonize people, to say that they're the reason for the ruin of society. And it's the same tendency that causes laws like this in Quebec, that causes laws anywhere that say that someone's core identity is no longer acceptable in public.
Well, and one could even bring it down to the tamer level by just saying, if you identify any group and demonize the entire group by finding the wrongdoing of a few to be equated. So, and I'm going to bring this back again to our own experience here, is few trustees screwed up. They went to Europe, they did this, they were really, really badly behaved, but the vast majority aren't. And I find that when any group is demonized, and I mean, the extreme example of Germany, of course, and the Soviet Union is absolutely horrific. I'm not going to make a parallel to that,
Yeah,
but I'm
no
going to
worries.
say that but in human nature, it's very wrong to judge people that way. And the Nazis did it because they just wanted to kill off as many as they could and have society accept it.
Yeah.
And it's a terrible, terrible, horrible thing that happened to innocent people, children and families, for no reason other than power.
And it's what scares me so much about the notwithstanding clause in Canada, because like what actually stops someone from doing that? It can happen here. Like,
yes, well, the notwithstanding clause was that compromise, I guess, to get people to sign on.
it was a compromise, but I feel like I'm the one who got compromised.
Well, I'm not sure that that's untrue.
No, I get it's, but you get what I mean. Overall, I would hope we could live in a Canada where people's civil rights and dignities are not up for vote, where they are all respected as a basic matter, of course. And perhaps that will not come automatically, but I plan to keep fighting for it. And Marcus, I think you will too.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Moving on to our final topic of the day, folks, and this is our local story of the week. In Edmonton, Alberta, vicious compliance. Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith decries Edmonton Public Schools' banned book list. More than 200 titles have made the list, including novels like The Handmaid's Tale. This story was reported by Nicholas Frew. And they're the Premier of Alberta and her Minister of Education said that inappropriate books, including ones with sexual content, needed to be banned or restricted. And now Edmonton has prepared a list, and Alberta is saying, wait, no, not like that.
I had to read this story twice to believe it. I thought when I first read it that they'd gotten it backwards, that the Alberta Premier was creating a list, and like specific lists, like from F. Scott Fitzgerald and The Handmaid's Tale with Atwood. But apparently she's complaining about the Edmonton Public Library Board's list. Have I got that correct?
The Edmonton Public Schools. So it's like
Oh, okay.
the Alberta
So the
government
school
like
library. Yeah.
required schools to create lists and gave them criteria. And now Edmonton has done exactly, their public school boards has done exactly what Alberta asked them to do. And now the premier is saying, hey, you did what I said to do, but you made me look bad in doing it. Like,
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question, Jake. Here,
please do.
do you think the school library association decided to make a point by putting books on that list that would, blow this wide open, or
I
do they actually believe that these books are dangerous
I don't.
based on the
Oh, I
law?
don't think a librarian would ever want to ban a single book, but I
Yeah.
do think they're
Hmm.
complying with what Alberta did. But they may, I think the librarian may agree it would be silly to ban some of these books, but that this is what they've been ordered to do by their employer. But like there are some books on the manga section. I know there's one manga from Japan called Berserk. That one I know has a lot of instances of rape, and I don't know that it
Oh,
handles it particularly appropriately. So I'm fine with that being in a normal library. I don't know if I necessarily stock that in a school library, but I don't think that like sexual content should be banned from a high school library as a matter of course. Like there are stories that like included in like a mature way, that included in like a way that it has an important message, and you know it is there's artistic value to a lot of these things. And I will also say, Marcus, if you have to take out books with sexually explicit content, would Catholic schools still be allowed to have the Bible?
okay. Well, I mean, there's a lot of violence and sexual, interesting sexual activity in the Bible. Um, so
Uh,
let me just bring it back to this though, Jake. Like, I am not a big believer in banning books. I think that age appropriateness is more important than the average classic book. So there are classic books which have been removed from libraries in school boards, and they might deal with race, they might deal with sexuality, you name it. And I just don't like the idea of some unknown committee deciding, oh, you know what, we don't like this one because we might get in trouble if someone complains, which is that's what drives bureaucracies, by the
and
way.
that's not the
Oh,
point of a
someone might complain.
library.
Oh dear,
Yeah.
we can't do this.
Like, that's not the
It is
point
the
of a
point. Yeah,
library. Like, the point of a
that's right.
library is to have the free exchange of knowledge. And I know, like, public libraries have gotten into fights all around the world with local governments because the local government wanted them to put an internet filter on the computers in a library. And the library was like, no, we do not restrict access to information in a library. And the governments were like, well, what if someone tries to browse pornography in the library? And then the librarian says, we will kick them out if they're actually looking at porn in a library, but we are not going to put a filter on computers and limit what information is accessible. We will restrict conduct based on actual conduct. And I think that that's like the attitude. And like, of course, you may have tighter conduct restrictions in a library in a school for obvious reasons, but like, no, you should not be banning books. And I know there are when I was 6 or 7, you talked about the Jewish day schools in Toronto. I went to
Hmm.
Bialik, and there
Yep.
were a lot of books on the Holocaust in our library. I wasn't prevented from reading them. I remember I read The Devil's Arithmetic in grade 5, where it ends with a girl walking into the gas chambers. In grade 6, over 2 days in the library, I just sat in a beanbag chair and I read Mouse by Art Spiegelman. And
Hmm.
like, people, there are some people who might have said I was too young to read these things, but I am very happy that I did. I learned a lot of important things by being exposed to it at a young age. And like when it comes to like adult topics like that, like someone once said, you know, if 12-year-olds were young enough to be killed in the Holocaust, 12-year-olds are young enough to be taught about the Holocaust.
Yeah. Well, that's a very, very insightful phrase and comment. I think, Jake, it might be valuable to make a distinction between school libraries and public libraries.
Yeah. And
School,
I think people do, but like you still do want to
yeah,
include like things like those books in school libraries. Like you do need to
yeah. I'm
have
not
hard
saying they
discussion,
should.
right? Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying that when you have a school library, you have a contained population that is going to go to the library as part of their classroom activities.
Right.
They're going to look for books. And, school libraries, they're usually designated by grade level.
Yeah.
So, the kindergarten kids aren't going over to the grade 8 section of teen literature or something.
Right, and the
and taking
librarian
books
will
from
probably
there.
poke their head in. Or if the librarian is like, okay, that kid reads way above their grade level, they might look at what they're reading and encourage them or give them other recommendations. But like, that's the whole thing. They're trained librarians where their exact job is to know what to stock for what grade level, to give support to students and what they're reading and give them recommendations for what else is appropriate for their reading level. Like that's what pisses me off about governments poking their nose into libraries. Like, this is what librarians train their whole life to do.
Well, I do a lot of workshops for early child educators, and I do them not as a trustee, but as a musician. I started on the Mr. Dress Up show. I have my own shows on Trios. I've done thousands and thousands of concerts for children. I, work with Raffi, Sharon Losenbram, all that whole thing. So I go into a room full of young adults, mainly, wanting to be early childhood educators or child care workers, okay? And one of the topics that comes up is reading or singing, and singing for kids, okay? But when I get into the storybook reading, which I just think is so key, I tell them, look, I wrote shows, Bob the Builder and Tupi and Bino, all these things. They had books, but that's not children's literature.
Wait, you
If you
wrote
want
on
real,
Bob the Builder and Tupi and Binu?
yeah, I wrote the live shows and we toured them all
Well,
across the country.
as a child born in 1999, thank you for my childhood and for half the content on Treehouse Television.
Well, it's either thank you or you're mad.
My
Yes.
mom found Tupi and Binu a bit annoying, but me and my sister enjoyed it very much.
I could tell you stories about writing that show. It was very interesting.
Another
What's
time.
the point of, yeah, another time. Get me back sometime, Jay. We'll talk
Oh,
about
I'm planning on it.
Okay, we'll get into children's TV. So here's the point I was going to make is that I tell early childhood workers and child care workers, if you want, and not if, when you bring in books to your center of work to share with boys and girls and children, you know what? Go to the public library, ask for the children's librarian because they have a passion along with a degree in what real children's literature is, not books that are spin-offs from TV shows. And the only one I can think of that might be the exception would be Angelina Ballerina, because I used to love the books. I thought they were great, really good children's literature. A lot of it, frankly, is junk. So you want to go to a librarian and say, hey, I've got, a group of 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds. I want to, do a story about the fall or the winter or something like that. What would you recommend? Or about some other event, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Or friendship, let's say, okay? The library is going to bring you to the section. It's going to show you 10 books that are fantastic that you may not have even considered. You may have looked at them on a shelf. And I'll give you an example of one. All of my kids read Goodnight Moon. Okay, I don't know if you know that book.
Oh, I know Goodnight Moon. Like,
okay.
we all
So
know Goodnight Moon.
Okay, Jake, you look at that book, and maybe this is just me, okay? But I don't think the artwork is particularly sophisticated, or the story, I'm not even sure it makes sense, but it connects with children, and it's done that for decades. And that children's librarian understands literature. So if you want to get into picking books in school librarians, let's talk to the librarians. Let's not talk to the bureaucrats, either at the government or at the board. Let's get into what do librarians say that's appropriate for students.
Talk to the people who care about books, who care about kids, and who have
They're
studied
passionate.
to do it for their whole life. This is what they like doing. They care about it. If you go to them and ask for this as a teacher or an early childhood educator, and you ask them what books are good for this like age level and for this topic, they will be more than happy to help you. This is what they live to do.
That's exactly right. This is what they live to do. They don't want to just spend all day pointing out where Cat in the Hat is. Okay.
Yeah.
And, God bless it. I love Cat in the Hat, but they want to go beyond that because they have that years of learning, years of experience and knowledge, and they're looking for an opportunity to share it. And please be that person when you go into that children's library section. Say, hey, I tell me something that's really exciting, that's different, that nobody knows about, or something about a seasonal event or whatever it is. And they're going to give you the goods. They're going to give you the real good information.
I love librarians, and I personally, I donate $125 every month to the Toronto Public Library system. I don't really ask for anything. I don't ever talk to them much. I just really, really like libraries. I grew up going to the Toronto Reference Library like all the time after school,
Oh yeah,
just because it was where I could learn stuff. So I am a firm
yeah.
supporter of libraries, and I get violently ill at the topic of like banning books. Like,
Well, I have an affinity and a love of libraries because my music career for singing for families and children started in libraries. And the great thing was you go into, like, I did like dozens and dozens of Toronto libraries, but I did them all over the country. And you sit there on your little chair with a table and a glass of water, and the kids literally are like at your toes. Okay. And the moms and dads are sitting with them, which I always encouraged because it should be a family event. And we're singing and sharing stories and being silly if we want, and just having this beautiful time together. And it's all based on story and music, and it's a wonderful thing. So libraries have a real special spot in my heart.
no, that's honestly wonderful. And I'm glad like that people who do work like that. You're exactly the kind of person who should be in a position on a school board. Like people who like kids and who want the best for them.
Well, thank you. It's an honor, and it's a real privilege, first of all, to have constituents elect you, and to have the opportunity to bring, my lens to it from someone that's worked with children and families all my life, and having and being a father myself, and a grandfather now of four, soon to be six. Two more are coming. There's nothing that really gets me passionate, more passionate than this. We need to value students and children, and that's why I'm speaking out about the trustee issue, because I am mad, and I try to be the most kind of a calm person wherever possible, but this is making me very upset. I'm worried about children. I'm worried about students, and I'm speaking out. And I really appreciate you, Jake, bringing me to this platform. I mean, you're such a wonderful interviewer too, by the way. But
Thank you very
bringing
much.
me, giving me this opportunity to share, some of my ideas and to learn from you.
No, I'm absolutely. I'm happy to have you on the show. Like, and of course, and I get what you mean. It's like you try to be like calm and serene and like understanding, but even Jesus flipped tables on occasion.
He certainly did. He certainly did.
Yeah.
Yes, he was not a bureaucrat. He was not a pencil pusher. He was someone that had this faith and belief in humanity and the goodness of people.
Well, hopefully we can live up to that. Markus, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the program. Thank you so much for joining the show, and hopefully we will have you again soon, because I definitely do have questions to ask you about your work on children's television.
Hey, Jake, I really, really appreciate your time, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Markus de Domenico, everybody, chair of the Toronto Catholic District School Board and trustee for Ward 2. And that'll do it for this week's episode. Thanks once again to Markus de Domenico for joining the program to talk about his role as the chair of the Toronto Catholic District School Board, the takeover of all the school boards by the Ford government, the role of school board trustees, both in a secular system and in a Catholic system, and in general, just what his and our mutual faith backgrounds mean to us. In the next 2 weeks, we're going to have some interesting stuff for you. Next week, we're back on September 7th with a special guest over from the Pacific Coast. Haven't had him on the show before, but I'm excited to have his perspective on. He does great work. And on the 14th, we're going to have a very special episode, another live on the scenes episode at the Ontario Liberal Party annual general meeting, where the members of the Ontario Liberal Party, currently including me, will decide, will Bonnie Crombie stay or will she go now? If she stays, there will be trouble, but if she goes, there may be double. Come back next week, folks. It'll be a joy to have you. See you soon. This is the end of the show. Bye.